Okay, well, good morning, and thank you for joining us here today. Yesterday, I sent a letter on behalf of myself and the Senate Republican Caucus, a letter to the governor urging him to immediately call a special session to focus solely on pension reform. The legislature needs to give full attention to this right now, to working on a bipartisan pension reform package, and we'd like to see it based on the governor's 12-point plan. We cannot wait because after the first of the year, we're going to be all budget. We won't have time to really talk about reforms that need to be put into place to help us get California back on a solid financial footing. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Senator Harman. Tom was our representative from the GOP caucus on pension reform this last year.
Thank you very much, Senator Dutton. And as most of you probably know, I have been very much involved in the issue of pension reform almost this entire year. We earlier in the year had some significant discussions with the governor and his office about pension reform. I want to compliment the governor publicly for coming out with this very bold 12-point plan that he proposed a couple of weeks ago. We have not seen the language in that plan, but if it is at all close to what the outline shows in his 12-point plan, I think it's a very strong first step towards what needs to be done to reform the California public employee pension problem. Now, we've been talking about this off and on most of the year, as I indicated, and Senator Dutton was right. We need to have a special session concerning just this issue. We can do that right away in November and December when the legislature reconvenes in January for regular session. We're going to have many other issues on the plate that might distract us from this critical, important reform issue, fixing the very much broken public pension system. You may have seen reports in the press that this has enormous support among the voters and citizens of California. Something like 80% support pension reform. So we're here today to talk about pensions and nothing else but pensions, and at this point in time I'd like to turn it over to my colleague Senator Mimi Walters.
Thank you, Senator Harman. First, I too would like to commend Governor Brown for beginning the process of seriously addressing California's massive unfunded pension liability. His 12-point plan is a step in the right direction. And in the coming weeks, I look forward to reviewing the specifics of his plan in the Joint Legislative Conference Committee. However, I believe the members of the Conference Committee are truly committed to addressing California's unsustainable pension liability. Calling a special session will allow for more input from legislative leaders and stakeholders. It is my sincere belief that our dire financial situation is the result of California's chronic debt problems, which are magnified by an estimated pension liability of $500 billion. The problem is so endemic that it requires the full attention of the entire legislature. Considering the enormity of the problem and past experience with the legislature, we believe that any reforms that may be approved legislatively must be placed before the voters of California. This is absolutely necessary in order to ensure that reforms are not easily undone by future legislatures. Finally, to establish that we will take care of California's mounting pension debt, whatever reforms we as a legislature approve, there must be language to guarantee that any savings realized by the reforms go specifically toward paying down the state's unfunded liabilities. We look forward to working with the governor and the majority party on achieving real reforms and savings for the taxpayers. Now I would like to introduce Senator Berryhill.
Thank you, and thank everybody for coming today. We do appreciate it. I will be brief. But certainly, folks, this group realizes the importance of addressing California's out-of-control pension system. And that's why we, along with Governor Brown, have spent the first half of this year working on a reasonable proposal. This 12-step proposal is certainly a step in the right direction. It is imperative that this issue be dealt with in a special session before the end of the year. Once the new year begins, as has been mentioned by the folks up here today, we will be talking about the deficit. And the pension issue will once again be put off until tomorrow. We can't let that happen. So again, thanks for coming here today. We look forward to working with Governor Brown, moving California forward, and we'll be glad to take any questions on the pensions today. Thank you.
Exactly how much is the unfunded liability according to your estimates, and what happens if we do nothing?
Well, depending on what analysis you look at, it's anywhere from $100 billion to $500 billion. And if we don't do anything about it, future generations are in jeopardy of not being able to retire after they have worked for the state.
Will the governor's plan do anything about the unfunded liability? It's mostly for new hires.
We understand it's mostly for new hires, and we need to address the unfunded liability issue with the governor. The fact that the governor has come forward with his pension reform plan, it is a step in the right direction, and we hope to have that dialogue with the governor about that issue.
Senator, can you comment on the LAO's analysis yesterday that there's limited things that the state can do for current employees, that even the governor's plan is problematic?
Yes, that's true. But I would remind you that the Little Hoover Commission came out with a report, I think it was in January, about a year ago, that says there is a legal theory that allows you to adjust pension contributions by current employees. So there's something you might call a majority opinion and something a minority opinion among the different courts that have considered that issue. So this is one of the things that I think needs to be discussed in a special session, is taking a look at it and seeing what's the best way to go. The LAO opinion that came out yesterday, I've just had a few moments to look at, is 35 pages long. I saw it for the first time late last night when I got off an airplane to come up here to Sacramento. So we're not entirely sure. I did see several of the bold sort of headlines in that report that said this is a good plan, we support the governor. Several times that was repeated. So I think on balance that the LAO is supportive of the governor's plan as myself. So I hope that answers your question.
Two questions. One, have you heard back from the governor on your letter? And two, you all talked about this being a good first step. What else do you want to see happen?
No, I have not actually. I have not heard back from the governor's office personally. Like I said, the letter was just sent out, and so I wouldn't anticipate hearing something until later on today or tomorrow. And then with regards to being a good first step, as was indicated, I think there's a lot of different things that need to be looked at. I think the governor's plan, as we had indicated before, members of the caucus, that we were interested in a comprehensive reform, and this gives you a good first step. And I think, but in order to actually fully vent it is the reason why we need the special session, and then we can deal with some of the other issues in some of the detail.
And what are those other issues? The current
well, we want to make sure also, too, one of the things we've been concerned about is making sure that we provide some constitutional protections. We'd like to see it put on the ballot so that we can make sure that future legislators on simple majority votes can't just change what's currently being proposed. We want to make sure that it's seriously going to fix the problem and not just kick the can down the road, which has been, unfortunately, what the legislature has been doing over the last few years.
Senator Dutton, why a special session? Can you explain the urgency of something?
Well, because we need to be focused on pension reform. During the regular session, we have a lot of other bills that are introduced for different things. We'll also start the budget process right after January 10th. The governor's going to be providing his State of the State address, and we'll also be proposing different changes. We'll be focusing on finances. This budget reform needs to be done regardless of anything else, and so it deserves a special attention because of the magnitude of the problem and the financial consequences to the state. That's the reason why it should actually be being a single subject session that deals specifically with this area.
If I could just follow up, I mean, we're talking 8 weeks between now, basically, and the release of a budget. You think you can do a massive overhaul of California pensions in 8 weeks?
I think we can, because actually this is not something that's been new. The representatives from the caucus, the Republican caucus, actually been working on this since last February, as well as reports that have come out from the Little Hoover Commission. It's time for action now. The governor has done a lot of work himself, and I think we have enough things in process right now that, yes, I think we can move fairly quickly if we make this the focus point of the session.
What do you think your chances are of getting a special session, given the fact that many Democrats say this should all be done through collective bargaining?
Well, like I said, I think you need to get it done in a special session if we're serious about fixing California's problems and being able to fulfill our commitments to future employees. We want a fair system, and I think right now it's not fair. And I think what's going to be unfortunate, there are employees today who will not get the benefit of any type of retirement plan because of the way we're currently going about this. So this needs to be fixed now, and we can't wait any longer.
How serious do you think the governor is about addressing this? There's a lot of speculation that he's fulfilling a campaign promise and doesn't have much invested in this beyond that.
I think he is serious. The 12-point program was, as I mentioned earlier, quite a bold step by him. It was, frankly, a movement by him to types of reforms that Republicans have talked about previously. I can't think that he would bring this plan out and then just shelve it. So we're encouraged by what he's doing. I'm encouraged by what he's doing, and I want to thank him for his leadership on this issue. This is a terribly critical issue in the state of California, pension reform, and we've just got to belly up to the bar, if you will, and get this job done. And let's do it between now and January 1st. We have time to do it.
What do you make of the Mike Janess, Dan Pellissier group's couple of proposals and their strategy for collecting signatures for it while the legislature works and then deciding?
You'd have to ask them about their strategy. I'm not a party to that.
Well, would you rather see a legislative solution or a ballot?
Well, it depends. I don't really know the exact details of either one of the two initiatives that they've filed. Certainly, I think usually the best route is to have a legislative proposal and adopt it and enact it. So I would probably favor the legislative solution if we could get it.
Senator, last year, or this year, discussions of pension changes were linked to revenue. The governor has said that he wants some kind of revenue initiative on the November ballot. I guess maybe this is for Senators Berryhill and Harmon. I don't know, unless anyone else wants to take it. But would you be open to that kind of linkage again?
We're not going to talk about today. We're not certainly going to talk about revenues. Today we are here to talk about pension reform. And just to add on to what Senator Harmon said, is this proposal is well vetted. We talked about this at length clear back in May. And so this isn't something that's just a Johnny-come-lately plan. This is something that has been well thought out, well vetted throughout the system. So again, we are very encouraged that the governor has stepped forward. We think that there's some heavy lifting that's going to have to be done here in the next month, but we would certainly, this group certainly supports moving this forward, putting it in front of the people of California, and fixing a problem that's taken us, quite frankly, 50 years to get here. It's going to take us a few years to get out of this thing, and the proposal that the governor has put forward is a long-term fix, and it's a long-term fix that needs to be done. Thank you.
Questions on pension? Yes, Senator Dutton, I guess, I'm sorry to pop in late. Is there a good chance that you have the full support of your caucus and to vote for a pension reform? I mean, oftentimes, not everyone's on the same page, and so would you be able to get the full support of all your caucus members?
Well, I can't speak that until the actual vote takes place, but I'm confident that the Republican caucus will support pension reforms.
Senators, on another topic, yesterday the Senate Rules Committee, as you know, did away with free food for senators. How do you all feel about that?
Does anybody have a question about pensions? That's what I feel about. No, that's what this is about. This is about pensions.
If nobody has any other questions about pension reform, then I think we're finished.
Senator Dutton, can I ask one other question? The question came up earlier about the concerns over not doing this through collective bargaining. You raised similar concerns when the prison guards issue came up a couple of years ago. What's different now?
I think that was a separate issue. I felt what was going on back then was the attempt to do something in the name of pension reform was actually was nothing more than just to try to punish some bargaining that was going on with some units. This here is a totally different situation. This is a reform for the entire pension system. And this is something I think is critical for us to do for the future.
That was a rollback of SB 400, though. I mean, that was part of it.
It was true, but there wasn't going to be anything that would be permanently binding, and it was questionable what the governor's motivations were at that time.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.